History usually moves in straight lines: dates, wars, kings, empires rising and falling. But there is one timeline that refuses to behave like normal history. It bends, it echoes, it repeats itself in patterns so precise that even modern scholars hesitate to speak about it openly. At the center of this timeline stands a man from a forgotten corner of the Roman Empire, Jesus of Nazareth. He owned no land, he wrote no books, he led no army. Yet 2,000 years later, global history still orbits around his words. Calendars split because of him. Time itself is labeled before and after his life. But the real shock is not his influence, it is how accurately his warnings, predictions, and descriptions of human behavior appear to unfold across history in a sequence no one has fully explained. This is not a story about belief versus disbelief. This is a story about a timeline that keeps lining up again and again in ways that disturb even the most skeptical historians. Jesus was born into a world ruled by Rome, an empire obsessed with control, order, and power. Judea was restless, occupied, taxed, and watched closely. Messianic figures were common, and Rome crushed them without mercy. Against this backdrop, Jesus began speaking not like a rebel general, but like a historian of the future. He spoke about kingdoms rising and falling. He spoke of moral decay before collapse. He warned that societies obsessed with wealth, spectacle, and power would rot from the inside. These were not revolutionary slogans, they were long-term diagnoses. Most shocking of all, he predicted the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. At the time, this was unthinkable. The temple was the heart of Jewish religious, economic, and national life. Yet Jesus said not one stone would be left upon another. In the year 70 CE, less than 40 years later, Rome destroyed Jerusalem and leveled the temple, exactly as described. Even Roman historians like Tacitus recorded the brutality of the event, unaware they were documenting a fulfilled warning. But the timeline did not stop there. Jesus described a pattern: first belief, then institutional power, then corruption, then collapse. History followed this rhythm with chilling precision. Christianity spread among the poor and persecuted for centuries. Then, in the 4th century, it became the religion of the Roman Empire itself. Power replaced humility, thrones replaced crosses, and soon the empire that claimed to rule the world collapsed under its own weight. Centuries later, Europe entered the Middle Ages, a time marked by religious authority mixed with political dominance. Jesus had warned about leaders who would honor God with their lips but keep their hearts far away. Corruption scandals, indulgence sales, and violent crusades followed. Then came the Reformation, exactly as if history itself was correcting course. But perhaps the most unsettling part of the timeline lies in Jesus' description of the distant future, a world that would feel eerily modern. He spoke of a time when information would spread rapidly, when false teachers would multiply, when truth would be debated endlessly but rarely lived. He warned of societies where people would be lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of truth. He described moral confusion, breakdown of family structures, and widespread anxiety despite material abundance. These descriptions were written in an age without electricity, printing presses, or global communication, yet they sound uncannily like the 21st century. Consider this. Jesus warned that the world would grow more connected, yet more divided. Today, technology links billions, yet polarization deepens. He warned that people would see signs everywhere, but struggle to interpret them. Today, we drown in data, but lack wisdom. He warned of leaders who would manipulate fear and crowds who would choose comfort over truth. History books from the last 100 years read like footnotes to these warnings. Then there is the timeline of suffering. Jesus never promised uninterrupted progress. Instead, he predicted cycles of peace, followed by crisis, wars, rumors of wars, plagues, and natural disasters. Critics argue these are vague predictions, but historians note something remarkable: the clustering. Major global conflicts, pandemics, and technological leaps appear in compressed periods, as if history accelerates toward turning points. The 20th century alone saw 2 world wars, nuclear weapons, genocide on an industrial scale, and medical miracles that doubled human lifespan. It was both humanity's darkest and most advanced era. Jesus once said the days would be shortened because humanity could not endure them otherwise. Some interpret this spiritually, others point to how fast history now moves compared to ancient times. But the most controversial part of the timeline is not about wars or disasters. It is about choice. Jesus repeatedly emphasized free will. He did not predict a mechanical future, but a moral one. He warned that societies would be judged not by power, but by how they treated the weak. Orphans, widows, the poor, the stranger, these were his metrics. When civilizations ignored them, collapse followed. Rome, medieval empires, colonial powers, even modern nations struggle with this equation. What confuses historians is not that Jesus made predictions, many figures did. It is that the predictions align across centuries without a centralized human plan. No committee orchestrated the fall of empires to match his words. No global authority enforced the timeline. Yet, the pattern repeats.
Some scholars suggest coincidence. Others say it is self-fulfilling. But neither explanation fully accounts for the precision of certain events, nor the psychological accuracy of Jesus' observations about human nature. He described how fear spreads faster than truth. Modern neuroscience confirms fear-based messaging travels faster in the brain. He described how wealth can blind moral judgment. Behavioral economics now studies this effect. He described how power corrupts spiritual institutions. History confirms this relentlessly. Even the idea of time itself is strange here. Jesus spoke as if standing both inside and outside history. He referenced ancient prophets, addressed his present audience, and spoke to future generations all at once. His words seem to activate differently depending on the era, as if the same text updates itself as time passes. In the United States, this timeline resonates uniquely. The nation was founded on ideals deeply influenced by biblical ethics, human dignity, moral law above rulers, and accountability of power. Yet American history also reflects the same cycle Jesus warned about: idealism, expansion, wealth, division, and moral debate. Today, Americans argue about truth, freedom, identity, and purpose, exactly the categories Jesus focused on, not politics, not borders, but the heart of what it means to be human. And here is the final mystery. Jesus Christ never gave a date for the end of history. He refused to. He said the timeline would not be understood through calculation, but through character. The signs were not meant to create panic, but responsibility. Each generation, he implied, would think it was the last and be tested as if it were. That may be the most unsettling explanation of all. The timeline is not a countdown clock. It is a mirror. History keeps confirming not just what Jesus said would happen, but why. Empires fall for the same reasons. Societies fracture along the same moral fault lines. Individuals repeat the same mistakes, convinced they are different this time. And that is why no one can fully explain this timeline, because it does not operate like a prophecy meant to impress. It operates like a diagnosis meant to warn. And 2,000 years later, humanity is still reacting to it, sometimes listening, often ignoring, but never escaping its shadow.
Jesus Christ may not have written history books, but history keeps writing footnotes to his words.